Hey PC World fans, Adam here with Alex, who is our lead video editor here on PC World. If you didn't know, he's the guy who edits the majority of the videos you see on the channel. Yeah, so thank him. So I know a good deal about CPU testing. He knows a good deal about Premiere Pro. So we thought it'd be nice to put together a video to help you understand the relationship the CPU plays in Premiere Pro and help you find the best CPU for your workflow needs. But more importantly, I would say, is actually understanding the relationship the CPU plays in your video editing workflows.
Yeah, not all workflows are the same. Not all gear that we use is the same. And not all of our outputs are the same. So all of these will be factors into our choices.
And really this video and this testing is based around the idea that content creators are the kind of people who need this kind of help. You're probably somebody who's editing on your own, or you're a creator on YouTube, or maybe you're even streaming to Twitch and then downloading the VOD and you know, making edits for other platforms. So the way we did this testing was we ran all these CPUs through PCWorld, which is a very professional benchmarking tool that will kind of look at a whole host of things, different file formats, different codecs, different ways of exporting things, to be able to spit out a number and subscores to help you kind of look under the hood of what you're doing. Yes, there are other ways to test it, but this is kind of the one that is highly repeatable and easy for us to kind of look through the scores at.
That's right.
If you want to see the full testing parameters of what PCWorld does for these tests, you can go to the link at the description below and kind of go through all of the different footage that they have. And some of this we will explain as we go through the video. But the first place to start is the overall score. So this is something that you would see in a lot of reviews, including ours, is usually you end up seeing like the overall score. So first up are the PCWorld results for Premiere Pro 25.1. That's actually what we tested with here. And at first glance, you can see that the core count does actually play a factor for the most part. So as we like to say around here, bigger bar better, but that is not always the case. So that's why we want to kind of dig into the subscores of this, because like at this point, you would think, okay, well, just the more I put into my CPU, the better, right? Across everything you do, right?
Right, yeah, you might want to just choose the biggest bar here and move on, but that wouldn't necessarily be the most effective choice for your use case.
Yeah, so the first subscore we're going to look at is Intraframe. And for those who might not understand what Intraframe is, Alex, please explain what Intraframe means.
Well, Intraframe is going to be your higher end codecs, things like Avid DNX HD and Apple ProRes.
Okay.
These are codecs that look at each individual frame to compress,
Okay.
which gives you larger file sizes, but less artifacting and the results of high compression that you don't get with other codecs.
Do we actually here at PC World use Intraframe for any of our?
We do when we're cutting. So Intraframe is our middle point. And this is something to consider for your workflow. So you've got your shooting, and then you've got your editing, and then you've got your output. And those can have 3 different sets of codecs. Sometimes they're the same on both ends. Sometimes it's the same in the beginning and the middle, but not the end. And this is where you'll want to consider the processing codecs for your workflow.
Yeah, and I would say for people who are maybe capturing gameplay footage and streaming it out or doing like video on demand after a stream, this is probably not where you want to play unless you're a large media organization.
Maybe or longer form stuff. If you're dealing with an hour-long piece of video, that might be a heavier lift in a LongGOP codec than it is for you in an Intraframe codec. And you might want to play an Intraframe just because you're dealing with such a large file already. It's a lot to chew on. So again, that depends on, like Adam's saying, depends on if you're dealing with larger ones, that gameplay stuff. Something to think about.
So now let's look at the chart from PCWorld here, and it looks pretty similar to what we just saw with the overall score, with a little bit of a variation. I'll say that AMD overall is performing a little bit better than the Intel counterparts. Not that Intel is bad here at all, but I mean, if you compare the highest Intel score, which is the Core Ultra 285K, at 122, that lines up with a cheaper Ryzen 9 9900X. And actually, that 9800X 3D is not too far behind either. So, you know, you could probably get more bang for your buck out of AMD than going with the most expensive Intel option. But once again, like you said earlier, it takes different kinds of things to consider in your workflow. So maybe AMD does a little bit better, in that middle part. Maybe you didn't shoot in Intraframe, but you're having some sort of transcoding process in the middle. So your editing would benefit from an AMD CPU. But as long as you understand kind of the relationship that it plays, then it can help you out, right?
Yeah, this I think really depends on where your time is spent. If your time is spent in that middle part, crunching stuff before it gets ingested or sent out, then yeah, this is gonna do you real good.
Okay, so that is Intraframe. Next subscore to look at is LongGOP. So Alex, please explain the difference between Intraframe and LongGOP.
Intraframe, LongGOP. Yeah, so LongGOP is long group of pictures, and that is a compression method that looks at the differences between frames and compresses that.
Oh, so it's not compressing every individual frame, it's looking at a bunch of frames and then compressing it based off of that.
Exactly. And so that's your H.264s, your H.265, HEVCs, and there's a lot of cameras that shoot there.
I mean, that's what we shoot here, right?
That's what we shoot here. That's also what we publish in. So on either end of our workflow is LongGOP. And so we consider that when we ingest and when we edit and when we output.
So that means that the computer is having to do a lot more work on its end to decompress that in real time, unless you transcode then to something less.
Unless you transcode.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that then
less
depends.
compressed, like Intraframe.
Right. So if you're spending a lot of time in the middle, you might want to just transcode, make it Intraframe, make it easier on your machine, do all your editing because you're spending all your time there, and then spit it back out in LongGOP.
I don't know. So I don't do a ton of editing anymore. Thank you, Alex, for coming on. But back when I did, I actually didn't do any sort of transcode. I actually did rely on LongGOP the whole way through. So this is somewhere where if you're going to do that, and actually I think this also applies to a lot of streamers, people who are doing like VODs afterward, they're probably not going to transcode. So like you're going to get more out of more firepower, potentially, you would think, because it's having to decompress it in real time. So now let's look at the chart. And here, once again, it is a similar kind of story, but more cores don't always equal better. So if you look at the AMD side of things, everything from that 12-core 9900X up to the 16-core 32-thread 9950X3D, I mean, is within a couple points of each other, like, and even the top end Intel score, that 285K, is right in that same ballpark. So sometimes more cores don't necessarily mean even better on that end. So that's one thing to note. And here, once again, you can get more bang for your buck maybe by saving a little bit more money. So surprisingly, like, you can't brute force your way out of it. But I mean, you still probably should have enough firepower.
Well, so I do think it's interesting that they're so similar up there at the higher end. And I don't know, I guess bang for your buck wise, you still could go with the Intel.
I would like to point out that, I mean, these are CPUs released within the last year or two, so these are high-end, brand new CPUs. So it's not like the lowest score on the charts here is just like, oh, it's unusable, right? I mean, these are still fairly high-end CPUs compared to a lot of them that are out there. But really, we're kind of looking at it in relation to each other. Not only AMD versus Intel, but even on the Intel side, the relationship between the newest gen and the previous gen. So you're looking at it in relation to each other, not necessarily as like oh, hey, like this one sucks or this one's the best. So the next file format to look at that PGBench kind of spits out as a subscore is RAW. And I mean, RAW just sounds like red cameras, right? Is that mostly?
It's mostly red, but yeah. I mean, that's what it means. It means uncompressed. So there is animation, there is actual RAW, and various other codecs that have no compression. So every frame is exactly the way it was recorded.
So the pure farm-to-table pixels.
Farm-to-table pixels.
Yeah,
Yep,
you're getting the whole thing. And these file sizes are very large.
They're the biggest.
They're the biggest.
But they're also the easiest for your CPU to work with. There's no compression happening in or out.
Yeah, well, I mean, and at that point, maybe it's just a matter of like SSD speed or a bottleneck somewhere else
That's
of
right.
like actually reading that file footage.
Yep.
So we definitely don't use RAW in any steps of our editing process. Have you worked with RAW footage before in any of your past projects?
With red footage and things like that. They're usually used when you really want to make sure you contain all the color information you possibly can.
And so it's like 444 colors and all that kind of stuff.
Your full spectrum.
Oh, okay, yeah. So now looking at the subscores here, interesting enough, we do start to see a clear difference between the actual core counts. So if you look up at the AMD side, the two 16 cores are up here. Then next, the two 12 cores are grouped together. So here, I mean, core counts have an actual relationship, like stepping up from one to the next. And even same thing applies to the Intel side. You're starting to see a little bit more separation, and here more cores can do you better, but at the same time, like it also depends like how many people are actually using RAW. So the last actual subscore to look at is GPU effects. And now I did use the same exact test bed for all of these pieces of hardware, and use the same GPU, so you would think, oh, well, the number should just be the same across all of them, but that's not necessarily the case, because even though it is doing the same workload, the CPU still needs to feed the GPU the information that it's actually playing off of. So here we're looking at potential bottlenecks, because maybe you would think, okay, well, I'm just going to go with a big fat GPU and then a really cheap CPU, but the CPU might not be able to spit the GPU information fast enough. And looking at the scores, I will say, I mean, like everything from the 8-core 9700X to all the way up to the 16-core 9950X3D, like those numbers are pretty compressed. Like we're not seeing a huge variation here, which makes sense. Showing once again that you're probably not going to have too much CPU bottleneck on here. Really, I think the only standout ones are the Ryzen 5 9600X, which is the 6-core part, and then that Core Ultra 225, which only has, what is that one? That is 6 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, so a little more anemic on the actual core count down there.
So while this chart I think is significant, I think it tells you more about maybe the neighborhood that you're in than the specific CPU you should be getting. Yeah, so if you're spending time massaging and crafting a piece for days, weeks before you put it out, then maybe working in Intraframe or RAW might help your workflow a bit. If you didn't buy a PC or a CPU with the playback in mind, then it doesn't matter if you're cutting RAW. So something to consider. But if you're on a quick turn and you want to pump that stuff out, all your content, then you're probably going to stay compressed the whole way, and you probably just want to get it in, get it out. And then one last thing to consider in that that threefold workflow is not just the editing that you're doing in the middle, but anything else, motion graphics, things like that, round tripping from Premiere to After Effects.
Or even bringing in a Photoshop template.
Bringing in Photoshop template, all that is going to affect it. Photoshop, most of that stuff, Photoshop files is all raw. Nothing's that compressed in that, so
but
something
still
to think about.
Heavily single-threaded usually, so
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot to judge here, and which is why I say, if we go back to that original score, you would just think, okay, well, bigger bar better, I'm just going to get the top of the chart thing, but a lot of times it's of benefit to stop and think, okay, well, what is my workflow? What are my needs? This is just on the CPU side, so there are other things that can help kind of understand the relationship for the hardware and the software, like GPU, like RAM speed, even storage speed to a certain degree.
Network speed.
Yeah, so we're not going to get into any of that stuff, but I will be doing follow-up testing next on the GPU side. So if you have any questions that you want me to kind of get into here for the GPU version of this, we will definitely get into that. And then later even DaVinci Resolve, because actually towards the end of my editing career, I switched over to DaVinci Resolve, and that's awesome. And I will tell you, DaVinci Resolve cares less about CPU and actually cares more about GPU, which is the inverse from Premiere. Premiere usually cares more about CPU than GPU traditionally. So yeah, lots to think about. thank you for walking through this with me, Alex, and kind of giving people the insight into video editing needs. And you're free to answer any questions too in the comments.
That's right.
Yeah.
Any questions about editing, our videos, our process? Shoot it out there.
Yeah. Cool stuff. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe for the next round of hardware testing in your video editing platform. Hopefully this gave you some insight, and be sure to watch that next video that's going to pop up down here, because it's a good one. It's a really good one.
See you guys on the next episode.